Thank you for coming today. Today, June 15th, is the 8th anniversary of the crest of the 2008 flood that so impacted our campus and our communities. It was for many of us, certainly it was for me, one of the most difficult and challenging times in any of our careers, but it was also one of the most inspirational, with many thousands of people coming to the aid of their beloved university and community and trying to save a place that was under siege from the floods of the Iowa River. Today's celebration is for all of those efforts and from all of us and all of you, the University of Iowa faculty, the University of Iowa staff and University of Iowa students, community members and community leaders, Iowa Homeland Security, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, our state's elected officials, the Board of Regents, and our past and our current University of Iowa leadership, including 2008 University of Iowa President Sally Mason. We have a number of important guests that are here with us today, and I want us to recognize them, those who are our elected officials and representatives, our local city officials, university leadership, and those from Iowa Homeland Security. If we can please give them a thanks for all that they've done in leading our efforts for the flood. The universities and the communities' pride, perseverance, and teamwork is what has allowed us to continue to deliver on our promise to all of our students and to our state, even as we faced the enormous hurdles that lied ahead of us in the wake of 2008's flood on June 15th and the days that headed us toward that disaster. Many of us recalling the days and weeks that led up to 2008's flood. But I also want to make it clear, and we want to make it clear, that while we put a lot of our attention on this place, on our campus and on this community, there are few living in eastern Iowa that haven't been impacted by floods and by flooding. Only days before the crest of our flood, Cedar Rapids endured flash flooding that impacted tens of thousands of residents in that city. And the impacts are not just felt in our biggest communities. Neighbors to our north, like Elkader and Littleport in Clayton County, ravaged by floods of the Turkey River and the Volga River. Littleport, a town that became unincorporated due to the ravaging disaster of the Volga River. Elkader, much like us, fought together with Iowa Homeland Security and became better than they ever were before. And so they too, along with us, can celebrate. And we know that we all share in eastern Iowa a connection of our past struggles against flooding, the lessons we've learned as we've recovered from that flooding, and the spirit of all of us to persevere. Here today, we have a reason to celebrate, many reasons to celebrate. We have nearly reached the end of our FEMA-supported physical recovery of our campus. We know that there is more work to be done. Susan Klatt and Carol Reasoner can vouch for this, but we also know that we have a museum to build, design and build on our campus. It will not be federally funded, and we will bring back our world-renowned, national and world-renowned museum back home to our campus. But we will also have grand reopenings of buildings on our campus, 3 grand openings of our flood replacement projects, the art building, the music building, and Hansher Auditorium. And we also have reason to be excited this fall as we open the University of Iowa Stead Family Children's Hospital. This is truly a historic moment and period in university history. And as the sign says out on what I guess is former Clinton Street, it is an inspirational time for all of us here at the University of Iowa and in our communities. And we're here to thank all of you who had anything to do with trying to protect our campus and trying then to help all of us as we recover our campus and our communities. And now I'd like to introduce someone to come and share a few words. Martha Kirby was our 2008 staff council president at the time of the floods. Lucky her. We were also classmates in grade school at Henry Sabin School, so familiar faces for those of us who were born and raised here. But I'll turn it over to Martha for a few words. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you, Rod. Yes, we were classmates. In fact, I used to ride my unicycle through the Pentecrest of the university over to Sabin Elementary while my mother was doing her work here as a graduate student. So I did have the privilege of serving the university community as staff council president in 2008, and I am thrilled to be here today to celebrate and commemorate our long road to recovery. We still have a little ways to go, but we've done an incredible job as a community of coming together and make this happen. Like many, the University of Iowa is more than a place of work to me. It is an integral part of my life story. My parents married during their undergraduate years at Iowa, and later, while raising 6 children, my mother returned to finish her undergraduate and graduate degrees. Several of her children and grandchildren completed undergraduate, graduate, and professional degrees here at Iowa. Our family's been served by the incredible medical team at the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics, sent our children to rec services, wilderness camps, attended Hancher events. The list goes on and on. The University of Iowa is more than a workplace. It is a community, and that was never more evident than during the flood of 2008. Now, Iowans are known for their pull it up by your bootstraps mentality, or grit, as we now like to call it. And well, this campus showed pure grit during the floods. Faculty, staff, and students responded to the call for help and spent days sandbagging, saving special collections from the library basement, carrying theater costumes up from their storage. When people were asked, they came and they worked for days, staff, faculty, and students working together to save not only the library collections, but trying to figure out how to plan for eventual major systems failure, implementing emergency protocols at the hospital, and doing everything possible to save priceless research. Some of our faculty and staff were displaced both at home and at work. And imagine having no normalcy to return to at the end of a day or to go to at the start of the day. It was truly an incredible time on this campus. Challenging times also provide opportunity for community members to shine, to lead, to innovate. And we had so many members of our community step up to the plate during this time, really almost every member, and some really shone. I don't want to give you a whole list, but there was a student who was Emily Barnes was our student editor for the Daily Iowan, and she managed to rally her staff as they were losing their own newsroom to get together in a temporary spot and not only keep their publication going, but publish additional editions while they were dealing with their own family and personal issues surrounding the flood. I don't know how many of you know Glenn Mowry, but I think he'll always be known as the man who saved our campus by having the foresight to procure temporary boilers that were instrumental in keeping our campus running. And of course, the innovation that comes out of these terrible events, like all the new research going on, the hydrology labs. So just amazing things coming out of this community, amazing people stepping up to the plate. And it is really impossible to capture all of those stories. I recently discovered, and actually it was through my own spelling mistake, I have to admit, that there is a difference between utopia, spelled with a U, and utopia spelled with an EU. So I challenge you to look it up. If you don't know, I'm going to tell you. Utopia with a U is said to be an unattainable ideal. Utopia with a EU is your own place perfected, and the duty of working towards its perfection lies directly upon you. And I think that our University of Iowa community, the staff, faculty, and students came together to create our own true utopia here in Iowa City. And I thank you very much. It was a privilege to be a part of that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. I always knew she was the smart one in our class, or smarter than I was. So after those great words, we have a couple of more visitors that I'd like to introduce you to. Two great partners and teammates of the University of Iowa in those dire days of 2008. The mayors of Iowa City and Coralville from 2008. First, I'll ask Mayor Regina Bailey, Mayor of Iowa City in 2008, to come speak, and then Mayor Jim Fawcett from Coralville. Regina.
Thank you, Rod. It was my privilege to serve my community during the floods of 2008, and I'm delighted to be here as we celebrate and our story of our community's recovery. As we've heard, the flood recovery and response was a total community effort from kids to adults. We also saw kindness and generosity from people outside of our community who came in and helped us, often with the messiest of jobs, filling sandbags, hauling debris, cleaning out buildings. Our community became stronger as a result of our work together in 2008. The City of Iowa City and the University of Iowa have always had a strong working relationship, but that relationship strengthened as we worked together on first fighting the flood, then recovery from the flood. We stood together as we worked with state and federal leaders to support our community's recovery. There was no parochialism, just pulling together to address the disaster. And that strong relationship between the city and the university continues today, with our collaboration on strengthening and improving the environment in our Iowa City's downtown, with our work together to present our wonderful summer festivals, and the investments that have been made by both the university and the city and the neighborhoods that surround the university. I look forward to seeing that close working relationship continue and seeing the innovation and benefits that it brings to us all. As you've heard, and I'm proud to say, we did not let the crisis of 2008 go to waste. 20-year plans were compressed into 8 and 10-year plans. We rebuilt, and we rebuilt with a big vision. The city moved its north wastewater treatment plant out of the floodplain. In doing so, we expanded our south facility, upgraded it to comply with new water quality standards, and created greater efficiencies in providing this basic utility. This move cleared the way for the creation of a public park that will lead to hundreds of millions of dollars in redevelopment investment in the riverfront crossings area just south of downtown. Moving the university's music building and Clap Recital Hall downtown will be tremendous. It's delightful to see the School of Music take center stage in our central business district. And a new Hampshire, the 21st century version, has risen on the banks of the Iowa River near the site of its previous incarnation. As we celebrate today, we recognize these gains come to us in the wake of loss. Fortunately, we had no loss of life, but in 2008, we experienced losses that made our hearts ache. 8 years ago today, over 250 families were forced to leave their homes, many with just an hour's notice. 90 of those homes were purchased with flood mitigation funds, which means 8 years ago today, with an hour's notice, those families left their homes and left their neighborhoods for good. 8 years ago, we lost the School of Music in Hampshire. As a graduate of the School of Music, these losses hit me particularly hard. I'd spent thousands of hours in those buildings. They were as familiar to me as my own home. I think many of us thought that 2008 would be similar to the '93 flood experience, that after it was all over, we'd clean up and the buildings would be open to us again. But that isn't how our flood story went. We lost those buildings forever. But from this crisis of 8 years ago and these losses, we build anew, we celebrate, and we start a new chapter. The buyouts of 90 homes means that families are permanently out of harm's way from rising floodwaters. And we celebrate a new Hampshire and a new School of Music. These buildings may have changed in form and in location, but I believe that they will have the same wonderful spirit that the previous buildings did. They will both continue to inspire our community and young people from across the world to creativity, to self-expression, and to a connection with the arts. I am so happy to be here today as together we look and begin this new chapter in the story of our community. I look forward to the changes ahead, and I'm grateful for the connections that we all made, the lessons that we learned, and the opportunities that were presented to us as a result of the 2008 floods. It has truly been an inspiring 8 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. And now Mayor Fawcett will come up and speak and recognize that in 2008 we had no borders. Those days of the flood approaching us, every day the leaders of the communities and the university went to each other to find out what they could do for each other, and that embodied what we saw in the volunteers on our campus and in our communities, and certainly in Coralville. So here is Mayor Fawcett. Jim?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Rod, for including me in the university's flood recovery celebration program today. For those of us who worked together on fighting the flood 8 years ago, it seems like not long ago that we spent 10 days filling and laying sandbags and taking other measures to protect us from what would become historic levels of floodwaters. We worked with our partners, including Iowa City, the University of Iowa, Johnson County Emergency Management, the National Guard, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and our citizens in a focused and determined effort to save homes, businesses, and infrastructure. And I've never been more proud of our staff, volunteers, and residents than we were then. As the water crested, over 400 homes and 200 businesses in Coralville were impacted. The intersection at First Avenue and Highway 6 remained closed for 2 weeks, restricting access between Coralville and Iowa City. 2 Coralville City facilities were destroyed, each sustaining over 5 feet of water. When the waters receded, we realized that the work had just begun. We regret the loss of homes for families and the impact of flood on Coralville businesses. We work closely with affected homeowners to identify locations outside of the risk of future flooding. We also identified the need for permanent flood protection, and we resolved to rebuild and build better. Today in Coralville, residents that lived in the floodway or had experienced repetitive flooding have located outside of the floodplain. We've relocated our 2 city departments to a new combined facility well out of the floodplain. We secured nearly $63 million in federal and state grants for permanent flood protection on the Iowa River, Clear Creek, and Biscuit Creek, all designed to protect to 1 foot above the 2008 flood level. The work has included permanent and temporary flood walls, earthen berms, stormwater, pump stations, raising and lengthening bridges, and raising and fortifying a railroad embankment. Work on our final flood protection infrastructure project will begin later this year. Carefully planned redevelopment in previously flooded areas has included new commercial and residential space, rebuilt infrastructure, the relocation of our old town hall, and trails for pedestrians and bicycles. None of this would have been possible without our partners, public and private, locally, regionally, and nationally. As we celebrate 8 years of flood recovery, I'm grateful for our partners, proud of our progress, and focused on the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Fawcett, and thank you to Martha, Regina, and Jim for both their comments and also their personal conviction to flood recovery when they were in such important leadership positions. And to today's leaders of our faculty, students, and staff, and our cities, and our county, and our state, for all you continue to do for these communities and for the University of Iowa. We sit atop the cradle of the University of Iowa, the city of Iowa City, and the state of Iowa here on the Capitol grounds, what we call the Pentacrest, to celebrate this historic moment, this historic period in our campus's history. 8 years ago, we would have looked down from the Pentacrest on a campus that was ravaged with flooding. We lost or had closed 1/6 of our campus. A quarter of our general assignment classrooms were closed, and we were only 2 months away from bringing the largest class in the history of the university to our campus. And we knew that we would remain in a flooded state for a good part of another month, as the Corps of Engineers had to lower the reservoir levels to a safe flood-tolerant level. On June 14th, we lost the power plant. It was mentioned how much Glenn Mowry and our utilities folks and our facilities folks did in those harrowing days. We lost the power plant after it had 22 feet of standing water, and this campus went black. And at the very moment, we were taking parts and pieces from around the country, with the National Guard ushering semis through closed Interstate 80 stretches, covered with water to get those parts and pieces here so that we could make homemade power plants within 3 days to bring this campus back off its knees and to its feet. The cleanup was remarkable, the inspiration we all saw from all of you, the patience and perseverance we saw of the faculty and students who were in apartments and churches and office spaces as we tried to get classes started that fall, and yet not skip a beat was remarkable. And I think I speak for many in how inspired we are at what all of you did and those you knew did to support our university and support this community in 2008. And so we celebrate and we end our speaking here so you can either get back to the shade or go get yourself some food. But one more time, thanks to all of you. Thanks to our partners at the state, the creation of the Iowa Flood Center, which came out of this from our #1 rated Hydraulics Institute program and has become not only instrumental in the community and the university's recovery, but those throughout the state and frankly throughout the nation and world in flood prevention. Those are the kinds of things that have happened here and been inspired by our 2008 flood and the recovery from it. With that, we thank you. We thank you for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the summer. And know that we're going to have, as I mentioned, grand openings. We invite you to the first of our grand openings for our new projects, September 9th, the weekend of the Iowa State football game. We are welcoming, and wherever Chuck Swanson is, he is welcoming the entire state to Iowa City to join in the grand opening of our new Hansher on September 9th and September 11th. We will have open houses. We will have tours of that great new facility, and look forward to all of you joining in the continuation of our inspirational celebration here at the University of Iowa, Iowa City, Coralville, and our surrounding communities. Thank you so much, and enjoy your day. Thank you.
You're watching City Channel 4 on TV, online, on demand, on Facebook, and now on the go on your mobile device.